Welcome to How's Your ePresence? This is Mark Galvin, the founder and president of ePresence, and you've joined our podcast, and by now you probably know a little bit about what we do on How's Your ePresence. This is the news broadcast, and so we drop these every once in a while when there's something interesting going on in the world of social media, and we think that the audience, you, the audience, would like to hear a little more about that. Whenever we do these, we bring on our director of social media, and that is Mr. Eric Welch. Eric, welcome.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
Good. You know what? I'm glad you're back on. We're doing this. We haven't recorded one of the news broadcasts in a little while. There's just been a lot of folks to talk to lately. So glad you're here.
Yeah, it's good to be here, Mark. Good to talk to you.
So here's what we're going to do. You and I are we've looked at this situation that's come up with Donald Trump and his posts on Twitter and some of the reactions that Twitter has taken or some of their actions they have taken. Would you share with everybody what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a stunning upset, social media is under fire from just about everybody. Everyone's favorite way to communicate is also everyone's least favorite way to communicate. So basically what happened this time, so going back to May 29th, and I'm not going to read the whole tweet, but Donald Trump tweeted at 5:53 a.m., and he was discussing the current protests going on across the country, but he used the phrase, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. And that is a very controversial thing to say. There's some history to that line. So Twitter, and this post was put across all of his channels. So Twitter took the step to, they didn't block it, they didn't take it down, but they did put a little warning, or they flagged it. And what that says is that this tweet violated the Twitter rules about glorifying violence. However, Twitter has determined that it may be in the public's interest for the tweet to remain accessible. And then they have a link where you can learn more. Facebook, on the other hand, didn't do anything. They left that untouched.
And on Facebook, it's longer. So it looks like he posted it. Some sort of aggregator is what he manages his social media with. But it's longer in Facebook, but you get to the middle of it under the beginning is these thugs. That portion on in the Facebook post is identical.
Yes. On Twitter, it was a series of tweets. So I think he broke it up on Twitter, and then in Facebook, he has the whole thing. So
it's actually interesting to me. It shows he is really purposeful, right? I will tell you, being in social media, this takes a lot of work. Takes a bunch of work. So he's typing this up, however he's typing it, with his thumbs probably, on his phone. He creates this big, long piece that he wants to push. And then he is going into Twitter and he's saying, okay, here's a piece. And then he adds another piece and he adds another piece. So it's a continuation of that post. It takes some time. So I'm just going to tell you, he's working hard at pushing this to multiple platforms.
Yeah. There's definitely some sort of plan that goes into this.
Yep, absolutely.
So anyway, so Twitter flags it, Facebook does not, and there's some uproar.
Oh, I got something else. I'm looking at the times. It was posted at 1:10 a.m. on Facebook on May the 29th. It was posted on Twitter at 5:53 a.m. Maybe he posts everything on Facebook and one of his staff members will break it up and put it on Twitter. That's huge. Yeah, it's he did it going to bed at 1:10 a.m. on Facebook, and there's so many things. There's so many ways we can play this. Speaking of rabbit holes, we don't want to go down there. Something we need to look at. We got to look at that. I'm wondering, is he posting to Facebook first, and does he have a staff member that then posts it to Twitter? Because you and I both know he does not have the patience to post and then break it apart and push it to Twitter.
Right. He's definitely not doing that part of it. So I'm curious if he did that on his own at night, and then a staffer in the morning was told you need to get this out on Twitter. I don't know. Anyway, so Facebook leaves it alone. Twitter flags it. Facebook leaves it alone. There's some backlash that Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg face internally, which led to some employees quit and some walked off the job. And there's been some internal groups within Facebook who have collectively voiced their opinions about this. And their argument is that this is not consistent with what Facebook has done. I can go onto Facebook and a family member or a friend post something that I deem offensive or racist or fake news or whatever the case may be. I can report that. If that is reported enough, it eventually gets taken down. Or blocked, I should say. And there's a notification there that says, this content has been removed for whatever violation it is. So they have the capabilities to do this.
So what's our question?
So the question is, looking at the Facebook. So Twitter, I think, handled it well. I think they flagged it, and people can make their own decision from that.
Yeah.
Facebook, despite having the ability to block or flag, they chose to do nothing. So the content it just sits there. So should Facebook have done something to indicate that this was violent or glorified violence is the way Twitter worded it?
Yeah, and I am torn on this because I think that if something could potentially damage us, right? Damage the consumer, then it should be blocked. You and I have talked about my feelings about pornography before, that I think that pornography ought to be blocked on the internet. But here's my challenge. My struggle is who determines what's blocked and what's not? That's my struggle. So if Twitter is going to flag, and they actually flagged another post that Donald Trump had put out there. They said that it was not true, that it was false, and that they put a little tag on it. And I can't remember the content, but it was something. Oh, I know what it was. It was about voting.
Yeah, absentee ballots.
That Donald Trump said that it was open to fraud. And they said, this isn't true. This is not true. And here's where you can see it. The question I have is this, is who determines what is quote unquote true and what is not? My problem is that we are as humans inherently biased. And I don't care, Eric, I don't care what you say. My kids are the most beautiful kids in the world, right? And I see them and I love them. And I want to squeeze their cheeks, whatever, right? That's what we do as parents. We love our kids. Well, the reality is my kids are ugly, right? and everybody else can tell me that your kids are ugly. I'm like, no, man, they're beautiful. So that is a bias. We are biased in general. So my struggle that I have is if they're going to start flagging certain tweets or certain posts by people, how do I know that tweet should be actually flagged? How do they keep how do they stay unbiased? And what worries me is I don't think they can. I think it's very difficult to take bias out of who we are as human beings. So I don't love that. What I would like for them to do is, the only way I think that would be appropriate is if they put some sort of system that flags certain words, and those words automatically got a flag that said the algorithm, the computer, feels like these words are questionable. So we do recommend that you read this under, proceed at your, with caution. That way, nobody's touching it. Now, there's the issue is how do you write the algorithm, right?
Yeah.
The AI systems can be also biased. We've seen that. There was an AI system that came out that was biased against African Americans, and they didn't realize that it was biased until the thing hadn't run a while. I think this was a Google algorithm that was written that they said, gosh, this thing appears to be racially biased. So I worry that we are going to block things that should not be blocked. Is the opposite view from Donald Trump going to get the same sort of blocking, discretion, whatever, because they carry the views of the people making decisions at Twitter? That worries me. Yeah,
and your suggestion of creating an algorithm to flag certain words, that could also be troublesome, because you have the media and writers and TV, newspapers, whoever, and also observers who are giving their own opinions on this or reporting the story. They're going to use those words. Right. Yeah. They could get blocked. So how do you control that?
Great point. Yeah, almost you're helping me. It's almost like, yes, hands off.
Yeah.
There's no easy way to flag this. And, it is Donald Trump getting a little extra leeway because he's president.
Exactly. That's where
Right?
I think Facebook employees and people who are upset about this it's not consistent, because if it was, regardless of Trump, if it's someone else with millions of followers, if it's Justin Bieber or Rihanna or Shaq or anybody else who has a huge audience and a huge off their social media platform, if they posted something along these lines or this exact thing, are they going to be blocked?
Right.
Versus,
that's a great question.
Right? So and so in the middle of the United States, are they do it? They're probably going to get blocked.
So I've thought about this a lot, especially because of our social media space, and my struggle with social media in general, if there's a problem, is that people can use it to manipulate other folks to get into their ideological corners and stay there, and they don't hear the opposite view. I've talked to a lot of people over the last few weeks with everything with George Floyd and hearing all these separate views, and they stay focused in their space and they're not willing to hear the other side. You've got to hear both sides, because there is value there. It informs us. It doesn't mean if I listen to the other side, it's going to change my opinion. I'm going to lose my. No, you know what? If your position is strong, it's not going to make a difference. We have values. You should step back on those values and lean on them and let them inform you. However, you should still pay attention to the opposite view. The long and short of it comes down to, I tell you, I just worry who's deciding what is said, what is filtered and what is not, and how do we do it consistently, right? Donald Trump's tweets should not get any special treatment over mine, right? They shouldn't. And I'll tell you what, some people argue, well, that's crazy, Mark. They absolutely should. So when you start parsing that becomes a problem, and that's what worries me. You really can't. You can't parse things down. I think what you do is you can. I would have no problem with certain accounts that have certain languages, things that are flagged, that you could say, hey, this is a challenge. This account has a habit of posting things that are, defined that way. Like Twitter said, glorifying violence should not be good. Do I think that terrorists that do very violent things on Twitter, should they be screened? Yes, right. So this is not an easy thing to solve. There's another group that's out there which I think is interesting, and they're called PragerU. They're a conservative outfit that posts videos on YouTube. YouTube has flagged all their content as violent. Well, as a result, they are adult. They're listed as adult content, so you can't ever view their content in a library, in a public forum, because they only allow the content that is good for all groups to be viewed. Well, I think that's inherently wrong, because PragerU's, I've seen their videos, they're not violent. They do, they support Israel. Okay, fine. And they have reasons to support Israel, and they have arguments. Again, I think it's good to hear the other's opposite view. I wonder where that slippery slope stops, and how do you make the decisions that is extreme, that is fair to everyone? That's a struggle. I don't think there's an easy answer to that.
Yeah, and when you're talking about, you could have 9 posts that are perfectly fine, or 9 videos that are perfectly fine, but if you have one that has one section of one video that's violent, does that then you blanket the whole
account?
Whole account, or the whole group, or whatever?
I think there's ways to manage that. I send that person notifications, say, FYI, you just posted this, you get 2 more strikes, follow the 3-strike rule, whatever. And now your account's going to be flagged, just letting you know that this is what we're looking at. But those things need to be defined, and political content in and of itself shouldn't fall into that realm. You should be fair to share both sides, and even if they're lying, right? And so if every time, if Donald Trump posts something and Twitter feels like it's a lie, fine. and they flag it. We believe this is a lie. Well, in that case, every time Joe Biden posts something that there is the opposite view that he's lying, then they need to put a flag. The opposite view feels like he's lying. Click here to see why. Okay. Are you going to do that every time? Great. Do it every time. But you got to be committed to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's going back to the initial topic here. Just Facebook is looking for, they need consistency. And that's what Facebook employees and people who are opposed to this are upset about. They need, because if you're, like you said, if you're doing it for X and Y, you need to do it for Z. And it doesn't seem like that's the case.
I am just glad I don't have to make these decisions.
Oh, absolutely. That would be awful.
You have billions of users on Facebook, and you want it, and it's turned into something, a whole different beast than Zuckerberg thought it would. It would be social. It would make a big difference in the world, and it has made a big difference in the world. But it's also created a lot of ill will. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of negative things that have come out of Facebook, and how do you need to control that organic audience? That's an interesting question. Do you need to? Should you do that? Yes, but right. That's kind of my response. Yes, but you got to think about how you're doing that. To me, if you force me to make a decision, I would. And my decisions would be based on a warning system, and you need to be aware, and no, you cannot do this. But I also think that if you post something on Facebook and you are the Russian mafia, whatever that means, and you're clearly trying to influence the election, you should shut that down.
Yeah.
How do you determine that? Well, they determine that by IP address. Okay. Well, maybe you can always throw your IP address through a VPN system. Okay, so that's been solved. Now these folks can get through. Yes, there's a lot of evil. The problem is, how do you determine who's evil and who's not?
Right. I know.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's tough. And we're talking about millions and millions of people around the world who are on these platforms, and trying to pinpoint one problem, it's impossible to do.
So there's going to be something that comes up, and if Donald Trump's executive action is not found to be illegal, where Twitter can lose their ability not to be held accountable for content that's on their site, that's going to change things.
Yeah, and even with that, how is that going to be policed? I mean, that kind of goes back to the original. That goes back. You still got to go back to that part of how are you going to police all of these posts and tweets and everything.
Yeah. There is a logical argument somewhere in here where you say just because you can't do it well doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And there's a name for that. And I can't remember what it is. And that is a very good point. Just because you can't do it perfectly doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Right.
And I get that. So, probably what they need to do is they need to figure out a way that they do this as consistently as possible, that each side is addressed equally, in that it is and it's consistent. You just got to be consistent, and so that I know that you're not going to abuse the power and only attack one side of an issue.
Right.
That would be unfair.
Yeah, and I think we're in the middle of the evolution of things, because there was a time when the social media was the Wild West, and anybody could go out there and post anything about anyone and anybody, and that was it. It was out there, and
yeah, and that's a whole nother conversation too.
Yeah.
The comments made on posts. I put this on my social media recently. I was like, my gosh, I'm going to stop reading comments on
I never read comments
in Twitter, because half of them are going to make me mad.
Yep. Yeah.
Really mad. Like, yeah. So
yeah.
All right, man. Well, this is good stuff. I appreciate it. This is a good, robust conversation. I think this is something that we all are going to be exposed to in some way, unless you live in a closet. And we've got to make sure that we're trying to be as fair as possible and being cautious along the way.
Yeah.
What are any final thoughts?
Just, it seems like every time we do one of these podcasts and you ask for my final thoughts, I say the same thing, but it just, I think it's good. It's just to be aware. If you're going to be on social media, you have to be aware of what you're saying, the context, the culture, the climate of what's going on in society. You have to be aware. Everything you say is going to be scrutinized by somebody, It could be a friend with different political views. It could be a boss. It could be a coworker who could report you to that boss if it's something. So that's not to say you need to stick to, puppies and rainbows and sunshine and everything's great and wonderful. You need to be able to put your opinion out there, but you need to be informed and just aware of what you're doing in the context of where you're doing.
Great point. I would urge you, if you're on LinkedIn, not to go down the route of politics, sex, and religion, unless you're in the business of politics, sex, or religion. I say that a lot, and I think that is true. I think it's becoming more and more difficult to stay away from some of those topics. And in today's environment, it may be corporately necessary to address some of that. If you do, that's great. Be smart about it and understand that you've got to walk a fine line, but you also need to show support for your culture, for your society, and the good that it can yield.
Right.
And define that any way you want. So, all righty. Well, good. Eric, thanks for joining in today. I always love it when you and I have these chats. We have these conversations, so all of you know, we have these conversations all the time. It's just every once in a while you guys get to hear it. So this happens to be one of them, because Eric and I are talking on a daily basis in our virtual offices. Well, Eric, again, thanks for being here. And for all of you, you can find us at anywhere on any social media, ePresence ME. That's our universal social media handle. You can also find us on our website at ePresence.me. We have webinars. We help people on social media. We help take care of the social media for you, for companies, for organizations, and for individuals. So if you're interested in letting us help you, give us a buzz. We'd love to do that. For now, thank you so much for joining us. This has been How's Your ePresence?